And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Remember to hit that subscribe button. It really does help us out. Appreciate every single one of you who joined our community over the past few days. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button already, please do so. Please and thank you. Now, as far as what we're trying to do here today, we've been trying to get everything kind of working. A little bit of trouble getting the live stream going, but we've got it going finally. And we wanted to kind of get started with the MLB season. Lockout's over. Spring training is in full swing, so we'll see what kind of happens going forward. Lots of different changes around the league. Still some more changes to come. Michael Conforto is probably the only big free agent still out there, so we'll see what ends up happening there. But we kind of wanted to go down the list, see what each team's been doing, and kind of go from there. So without further ado, let's get it started. First team on the list is going to be, of course, the New York Yankees. Just kind of going down the list here. The Yankees, of course, have Garrett Cole. They've already had Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. Those guys are looking for kind of building off of last year, kind of taking that next step forward. The big question I have for this team is after they've solidified their infield is what they're going to do with their starting staff. Now, there's a number of young starting pitchers that they could use that are in the minors throughout the season, and that's very likely for them. However, I don't see them see that being a legitimate solution to their problems. Do I see them going after a starter midseason? Absolutely. Will they probably have to give up Volpe or one of their other top prospects? Definitely. But it remains to be seen what will end up happening with that. From the offensive side of the ball, they brought back Anthony Rizzo to take over that first base role. Left-handed hitter for a very right-handed lineup. Left-handed hitters always seem to have done well in the Yankees lineup, pretty much in either stadium that they've had. Pull hitters, that kind of a thing, have done really well. Joey Gallo is there to help lengthen out that lineup. But the question for him is whether or not he can get on base enough, if he can hit enough for average there. His first year in New York did not go well. Didn't go well with fans either. Had some issues there. So we'll see if he can rebound. He had great success in Texas, even without having a high batting average. His on-base percentage was through the roof there. That's why the Yankees took the risk of him. So we'll see if he can rebound there and have a nice closing year. Now, as far as next year, Joey Gallo should be much better. The shift won't be around. He is one of the top two most affected hitters by the shift last year, Austin Meadows being number one of the Rays. But Joey Gallo should do much better next year. Will he do better this year? I don't know. From other players that haven't been signed yet by the Yankees, there's speculation that they might go after Brett Gardner, bring him back in kind of a reserve role. More of a nostalgic piece here for me. Would it be nice to have him back on the team if you're a Yankee fan? Absolutely. You've cheered for him for 10 years or more. Is he really going to bring that much to the table? Not really. I don't see him being able to provide anything to this team that wouldn't be better off having anybody else that's already on the major league roster there, or giving that spot to a young guy coming up in the minors. We'll see what the Yankees end up doing. On to the next one. The Boston Red Sox they've had an up and down offseason. They've been in on a number of top free agents out there. They end up getting Trevor Story to take over that second base role. They were in on Freddie Freeman all the way to the very end, and we're kind of surprised to end up seeing him go to the Dodgers. But it sounded like they had a very competitive offer out there for Freeman. They didn't get him. They're going to have to go young at first base, which isn't a bad thing. They do have some flexibility there. Devers, of course, is their best player on the team. Third base is locked up for years. Bogarts is in the final year of his deal. Going into this season, will he have that career year that most people do going into their walk year? That remains to be seen. Trevor Story is there just in case the Red Sox don't feel comfortable signing him for the following season. But for this season, that infield looks set. Everything looks pretty good. Kike Hernandez will be that multifaceted player that can play any position for you. Last year, he was kind of limited to a little bit of second base just because they didn't really have a number one guy there. Now with Trevor Story in-house, that position's locked up, and Kike can really expand on his value. Will they miss a player like Kyle Schwarber? Absolutely. He brought a lot to that team, especially in the playoff run. Will they be able to replace that production from rookies, from getting somebody like Trevor Story, more consistent at bats, Kike Hernandez being able to fill in at other spots? Sure. But the biggest question I have for this team is going to be that starting staff. Chris Sale is already not going to be out there for to start opening day. Other injuries along that starting staff as well. They let go of Martin Perez, Garrett Richards, who did provide solid innings for them last year. So it remains to be seen where those innings are going to come from. They're relying a lot on a couple of Rule 5 picks, so we'll see what ends up happening there. Youth is going to be the name of the game for the Red Sox. Are they going to have enough of it to be able to get them through the season? Possibly, but they're another team that's going to need a starter as the season goes along. Third from the AL East is going to be the Toronto Blue Jays. They've had a fantastic offseason. They bolstered that starting staff. Barrios, they signed him to that extension as well. Great all-around starting staff for the Toronto Blue Jays. From an offensive side of the ball, they have a lot of youth on that team. Will it continue to progress? Will George Springer have a better year than he did last year with the Blue Jays? Didn't exactly blow the cover off the ball last year. We'll see if he can kind of improve off of that. The big surprise that they had last year was just how consistent Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was. He was exceptional last year. Even after one great year of production, he is already being ranked as the best first baseman in all of baseball. Do I believe he's better than Freddie Freeman? No. His defense isn't even close. I need to see it for more than 1 year. He is very young, and he needs to get the weight thing under control. So far, so good as far as spring training goes. Things seem to be going well for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. The question remains, though, around the entire Toronto Blue Jays team, is any Canada team, Toronto being the only one right now, is what they're going to do as far as vaccination status. There are still a couple of players apparently on the Blue Jays that are going to have some issues with that. Other teams coming into Toronto will be more affected, though, I believe. Sounds like most of the Toronto Blue Jays are vaccinated. The Yankees, for instance, are going to have a number of regulars that are not going to be able to play in Toronto this year because of their vaccination status. Even though New York City did lift that ban for them, it's not lifted in Canada, so it's going to have they're going to have some difficulty going there. So Toronto could see a little bit of a boost as far as home field advantage goes. The Tampa Bay Rays seem to be the class of that division and have been for a number of years. Will they continue to be? Absolutely. They just seem to have a formula that's always built for success. They never seem to spend outside of their means. That's why it was kind of surprising to see them in at the number they were in at with Freddie Freeman. 6 years and 150 million is what their offer was. The Los Angeles Dodgers went a little bit higher than that, but just to see them in the ring at that price level is very surprising. Makes you harken back to a guy like Evan Longoria, except Longoria was a homegrown guy for them. Freddie Freeman would be an outside free agent addition, and they've never really done that. So we'll see what kind of thing what kind of step the Tampa Bay Rays are going to take going forward. Pitching staff has always been young. Morton last year, gone as well. He went on to the Braves. They did feel a little bit of his absence earlier in the year, but as the year went on, their youth did seem to provide some success. They got a lot of youth coming as well. Shane Baz, we'll see if his success is there. Glasnow is going to be out for an extended period of time, so we'll see if they feel his absence as well. But Wander Franco, those kinds of players have played really well for them. We'll see if that youth continues to serve them well. Let us know in the comment section what you think of the Toronto Blue Jays anyway, the Tampa Bay Rays, New York Yankees, and Boston Red Sox. Now, don't forget the Baltimore Orioles are in the division, but they're not going to be competing for a playoff spot. Sorry, Orioles fans, it's just not going to happen. You have a number of good pieces, Cedric Mullins, Trey Mancini, John Means, but those are pieces, and I expect a couple of those pieces to be on other teams by the end of the year. You have a couple of good young rookies coming, and I expect them to try to build off of that youth going forward, so we'll see what ends up happening there. But as far as this team competing for a playoff spot, it's just not going to happen, even with the expanded playoffs. So look forward to having young players on the field, cheer for them, hope for their progression as they get better and better in the league. But the Baltimore Orioles are just not going to be good this year. Moving out of the AL East, we're going into the AL Central. The Chicago White Sox have been the class of that division last year, and I expect that trend to continue. In fact, I expect this team to get even better. Just from having another year around each other, another year of progression for Jimenez, and actually having a full season of their center fielder as well. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Anderson is also the shortstop there. He's played very well. From the pitching side, they did lose Rondon to the Giants, so we'll see if they can get some solidity from their youth that they have there. Kopech, maybe he transitions into a starter. They have a bunch of young arms, fireballers in the bullpen. Their bullpen is quite possibly the best in the majors, so it remains to be seen if Craig Kimbrell is going to be there a full season. But as of right now, they definitely have the best pen in the majors, and that seems to be in the regular season what's going to prove them very well. They have Hendricks as well to close out games. So when he's not on, they got Kimbrell. Kimbrell's on, or not on anyway. They got Hendricks. That bullpen's going to be dynamic. And like I said, another year for these young pieces to grow is all that this team really needed. Lance Lynn is there. He's been nothing but stable ever since he moved to Texas. He had a little bit of rocky beginnings anyway with the Cardinals and then the Yankees and Twins. But ever since he went to Texas, he's been nothing but an ace. Excellent production, always gives you about 6-7 innings pretty much every game, and so that should do well towards the back end of that rotation as they try to put in some young pieces to lengthen it out a little bit, especially since the lockout just ended about a week and a half ago. On to the next team. The Minnesota Twins, to me, are the second best team in this division. Carlos Correa really boosts up their potential. We'll see what kind of success they have going forward. But Carlos Correa is definitely the best player on this team now. Byron Buxton, if he was healthy, might be in that conversation. But Correa is now the unquestioned leader of this team, even though he's going to be on a one-year deal with an opt-out, of course, essentially this year. I expect him to opt out after the season and try to get a more long-term deal. Scott Boras is his agent after all. He is very young, so we'll see what kind of success he has getting that long-term deal. But for the Twins, they've done nothing but improve this offseason. They got offloaded some bad contracts as well. They got rid of Josh Donaldson to the New York Yankees. They did trade for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and then immediately flipped him for Gary Sanchez in that Josh Donaldson deal. So it remains to be seen if the Twins are going to be any better for those additions. Gary Sanchez, to me, is on the downside of his career. Ever since his rookie year, it's just been a downward tailspin for Gary Sanchez. Can't keep the ball in front of him, can't make a throw to second base. He's not a catcher in my book. At this point in his career, he's a DH to me. We'll see if the Twins can rehab that arm on him, if they can get him to keep the ball in front of him as a catcher. But if you're a Twins fan, Gary Sanchez behind the plate does not spell a winning team. But as far as the Minnesota Twins go, I do expect them to finish second in that division. Will they make the playoffs? You'll have to stick around and find out. The Cleveland Guardians are the next team on the block here. Shane Bieber, pretty much, and Jose Ramirez are the lifeblood of this team. I expect them to take them as far as those two can go. Will they miss some time due to injury? I expect Bieber will probably miss a little bit of time. It is a short spring training for them. He missed a little bit of time last year. So we'll see if Bieber can continue that success that he had there. But this team, they no longer have Francisco Lindor. They don't have the pieces really to get a full season of production out of every single spot. They've always had trouble getting outfield help as well. Even though Conforto is out on the market, and a lot of fans would love to see Conforto go to the Guardians, it's not going to happen. The team wants to go young there again. Not that I agree with that position, and I'm kind of with you guys as far as the fans saying they really need to get some experienced veterans in there. But Jose Ramirez is going to take that offense as far as it's going to go. And as good of a player as he is, I don't expect it to be anywhere near a division title. They're going to finish third. Going to group the final two here together. The Detroit Tigers and the Kansas City Royals both are in the camp for me of rebuilding, coming out of a rebuild anyway for both of these teams. The addition of Javier Baez for the Tigers really does help them out. A.J. Hinch is a manager. They should do much better, maybe get into that 70, low 80 win count, but they're probably going to finish fourth. The Royals, this is all about Bobby Witt Jr. Can Bobby Witt Jr. come into the majors and really leapfrog them ahead of other teams in the division? Maybe, but as good of a player as he is, they need more around him. And Bobby Witt Jr. is going to have a fantastic career. He's hit a couple of home runs already this spring training. He is knocking the cover off the ball. As a Rangers fan myself, I've watched him obliterate Jack Leiter in the first at-bat of the spring training anyway, but that Jack Leiter threw. Didn't hit a home run, but it was a very good at-bat for Bobby Witt Jr. He's going to have a great career. If you're a Royals fan, he's all you really have to look forward to this season, along with a couple of other young players possibly moving forward in their careers. But let us know in the comments section what you think about your favorite team and where you think they're going to end up. On to the AL West. Now, as far as the class of this division has always been the Houston Astros for a number of years now. Jose Altuve has been the best player on offense as well for a number of years. However, Kyle Tucker is definitely hard coming. He's very good. He takes kind of that Michael Brantley approach at the plate. Michael Brantley has been very productive for them. However, he is getting older. However, this year, Yordan Alvarez, Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve, Gurriel, they've got a loaded team, and I expect them to still take this division. But it's going to be a little bit closer. They lost a little bit of pitching. Zach Greinke is no longer there. Lance McCullers is going to miss time. He showed up to spring training. It's just not going to. He wasn't in shape anyway to be able to be ready for opening day. Their younger starting pitchers that they had last year that they tested in the playoffs, another year of experience should help them. But beyond that, they don't have much in the minors right now. Their minors are starting to get a little bit depleted from a pitching side. They've always had position players, but from a pitching side, the arms are all at the major league level right now. So we'll see if they can continue that success. Bregman, now that Correa's gone, He may or may not slide over to shortstop. There's still a little bit of debate as far as what happens there. They have a young guy in Pena that may take over that spot. Move Gurriel back over to third base, Bregman back to shortstop. Who knows? But we'll see what kind of success the Astros do have. I do expect them to take the division, but it isn't going to be nearly as wide a margin as everybody thinks. Next team on this list is going to be the Texas Rangers. They made all kinds of additions through Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, John Gray, other even smaller additions that they made, Mitch Garver. That should improve their offense behind the plate. They didn't really have any good offensive production at all behind the plate. This team was a 100-plus loss team last year, and this might be a team that could go worst to first, but the question is whether or not that pitching staff will hold up. It's a lot of youth at the back end of that rotation. We'll see if they can continue to progress in their careers. John Gray takes over their ace role. They didn't really have an ace last year, so we'll see how much success the pitching staff has. I don't expect them to take the division, though. Maybe a second-place finish is a really good upgrade for them this year after losing 102 games last year. Another year of Nathaniel Lowe growing as an offensive player. There was some question whether or not they would go after Matt Olson in this offseason. They did put in a lot of bids for him. They were in it to the very end. Atlanta just was able to they were willing to give up those top prospects that the Rangers were not. They gave up their number 1, number 2, number 6, and number 14 prospects in order to get that deal done, and they gave him an extension on top of that. The Rangers probably would have been fine with the extension, but they didn't have the prospects that they were willing to give up anyway at the level that the Braves were. As far as the Texas Rangers, though, this team is going to go as far as the middle infield takes them. Corey Seager and Marcus Semien perform very well. This team could be a second-place finisher and possibly push for a wild card spot, but you'll have to stick around to the end of this video and find out where this team is going to finish up. The team that has finished very well in the last couple of years is the Oakland A's, but they've sold off a lot of pieces. They still have 2 more pieces plus to give away. They gave away Matt Chapman to the Toronto Blue Jays. That should improve their offense. The A's gave away Matt Olson to the Braves. That should improve their offense and replace Freddie Freeman's production. But if you're an Oakland A's fan, this is all about the youth that you're getting back. Christian Pache is going to be your center fielder, I believe, to start the year after Starling Marte left in free agency to go to the Mets. If you're a Mets fan, great center fielder, and he should be great for a number of years of that contract. I was kind of surprised at the deal, 4 years at 80. That's close to what Lorenzo Cain got from the Brewers a few years ago, and Marte is certainly a better player. There is some PED suspensions in the past there for him, so maybe that's what drew down his contract. But 4 years and 80 is a great deal for the Mets. If you're a Mets fan, you've done very well. But as far as the A's, I don't really know what they're going to do as far as success. This team is going to be very limited. Chris Bassett goes to the Mets. Frankie Montas is going to be traded. Sean Manaea is going to be traded. If you're an A's fan, I feel for you. You've had this happen many times. Josh Donaldson before this. Stick around, A's fans. Maybe in another couple of years when you do get a stadium, you'll actually be able to cheer for players longer than their rookie deal. That's all I really have for you. If you're a Mariners fan, things are looking up. You have a lot of top prospects in the game. I think you have 3 in the top 10 or close to it anyway. A number of really good young players already on the roster. The question for the outfield anyway is Kyle Long anyway. Can he stay healthy? They did acquire Jesse Winker, an all-star left fielder anyway. I don't believe the Shredder that he's the best left fielder in the game, but he's certainly very capable. We'll see what kind of success the outfield of the Mariners has. They do have a lot more options where they may be able to pivot one of those players over to first base whenever they need to give him an off day or whenever they just need to get more at-bats for those guys. They seem to be willing to stick with Crawford at shortstop. I thought maybe they might go in after one of those top shortstops in the game. They were supposedly in on Freddie Freeman as well. They do have a little bit of a hole there, so maybe they end up circling back to first base as the trade deadline comes around. And, of course, Jerry Dipoto is more than willing to make trades to improve his roster. Starting staff, they did get the Ray from the Toronto Blue Jays last year. That should really boost things up for them. Another year for their young starters as well, Justice Sheffield, etc. Should hopefully get a little bit better with another year of success in the majors. This team, though, the left side of the infield is the biggest question mark for me. Eugenio Suarez hasn't had a good year in a couple of years now. Will he rebound with a new team, new hitting coach? Maybe they find something in his swing and he gets back to the track record that he had proven before that. Crawford, again, they were looking to improve that position. Does he continue to get a little bit better? The Phillies were willing to move on from him. Uh, are the Mariners going to be willing to move on from him after this year? Quite possibly. Starting staff, those where it begins and ends. Is the addition of Robbie Ray going to be enough for the starting staff? Are the outfield additions, Winker, are they going to be able to get those the youthful prospects that they have, the top 10 prospects that they have up in the majors because of all the outfield talent that they have? Mitch Haniger is still there as well. And then on to the NL East. The NL East, or excuse me, the Los Angeles Angels, almost forgot about you guys. You guys did add Thor, so the pitching staff is a little bit better. A one-year deal for Thor, but for the prospects of 2022, he is coming off injury as well. We'll see if he can rebound some of his value. This is all about Mike Trout, Rendon, Upton, Adele, or Walsh, those kinds of players, Fletcher. They have the offense. They've always had the offense. The question is the pitching going to be there for them? Trout coming back healthy will also help as far as the offense goes. Don't get me wrong. But if you're an Angels fan, the pitching staff has always been the issue for you. They finally did invest a little bit of money in there. They didn't go after one of those other starters that was out there, Sonny Gray. They didn't end up with one of those names anyway. Will they go after a Frankie Montas or a Sean Manaea possibly? The prices have been a little bit depressed anyway, at least to my understanding. Tyler Mahle of the Reds is out there. For the price that Sonny Gray went to the Minnesota Twins, you would have liked to have seen him go back to the West Coast and possibly go to the Angels. If you're an Angels fan, that's an opportunity missed. Maybe a guy like Tyler Mahle, they go after there as well. Moving forward, on to the NL East. Let's start with the Atlanta Braves, the world champion Atlanta Braves. This team has done nothing but have a lot of success over the last few years. Bear with me for just a moment. Oh, sorry about that. Live streaming, you never know what's going to happen. All right, on to the Atlanta Braves. That's where we were. Freddie Freeman was the big loss for the Atlanta Braves. They did bring in Matt Olson. He should have a lot of success there, the Atlanta native. We'll see if his success continues. He wasn't necessarily the top first baseman, but maybe in a couple of years he will take over that mantle from Freddie Freeman. He'll have to compete with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for that title. Other players that the Braves have brought in, they still have Dansby Swanson. They brought back Eddie Rosario as well. Ozuna is going to be back as well for this team. Remember, in the World Series, there was all this conversation about how much talent they have in the outfield and how they had to rework their team in the middle of the year after the injury to Acuna. That is still true, but this team should be much better going forward. Ronald Acuna should be back probably around June. He's the best player on that team, even with Freddie Freeman when Freddie Freeman was there. Matt Olson should provide some of that production that they were missing at first base with Freddie Freeman going. The starting staff should be getting a little bit better as that staff gets a little bit older. Ian Anderson acquitted himself very well in the playoffs, so we'll see if that continues. If you're looking at that bullpen, though, they did get Kenley Jansen to take over that ninth inning closer role. At the end of the season last year was the best Kenley Jansen has ever pitched in the majors, but how much longer can he really do it? Bullpens from year to year go up and down. There's really no consistent performance from year to year, no matter how good of a reliever you are. Those top level relievers, that's why they get paid $16 million a year like Kenley Jansen, but he's had his health issues before, and he wasn't great in the beginning of the season last year. Bullpens are cyclical, so we'll see if the Braves can continue to have success back there, or is this the year they finally regress in that bullpen? They did give away a few of their arms in the minors, so we'll see if they still have that depth there as well. Kyle Wright did have some success in the playoffs. He'll go into the rotation this year. Does he continue to have the success that he found in the playoffs? We'll see. On to the New York Mets. They've had a lot of headlines go their way this year. Robinson Cano will be back for this team. They do have Francisco Lindor, of course. The biggest headline, though, is that they got Max Scherzer. That's right. Mad Max is no longer an enemy. He's on your team. He's no longer with the Washington Nationals after all those years of tormenting Mets fans. Now you get to have a 1-2 punch of Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. Probably the best starting tandem in the majors if both are healthy. Of course, deGrom wasn't healthy towards the end of last year, missed a lot of time, and that's why he didn't win the Cy Young. He probably would have won it if he had been healthy the entire season. Max Scherzer is almost always in that Cy Young discussion as well, but he's getting a little older, had arm fatigue in the playoffs, and you never see him miss games. It's even more so worrying that he missed games in the playoffs. He had to shift starts as well, and that's why the Braves went on to the World Series, because he wasn't able to make that start in Game 5, I believe. So if you're a Mets fan, that's the major worry here. How much does Max Scherzer's arm have left in it? You're paying him 3 years, $43 million per year, $130 million total. Say his arm blows out in July. You're left the rest of the season with that price tag. And as much as ownership is willing to say, hey, we're willing to spend and go all out, how much further are they really willing to go? That remains to be seen. From a perspective of a Mets fan, the top two of DeGrom and Scherzer is tantalizing if they can stay healthy. The back end of that starting rotation is very good as well. Taijuan Walker, Carrasco. They got a couple other starters as well that they got in there. Bassett that they got from the A's is a great number 3 starter. But this team will go as far as that starting staff takes them. As good as it seems that they have a lot of position players out there, but none of them are elite starters anyway. Lindor had a couple of poor years since he's gone to New York. He seems to have quieted some of those emotions that he had, at least going into the spring training. At least he's saying the right things so far this spring. Remains to be seen if he can turn it around in success on the field. Let us know in the comment section if you're a Mets fan what you think. How many wins do you think you're going to have? Do you think you break the 90-win threshold, 95 wins, 100? With a starting staff like that, they very well could. But the question is that, of course, that bullpen, which they've had some issues with, and can they stay healthy in that starting staff? The Philadelphia Phillies are the next team on the list. Zach Wheeler, of course, competed with Jacob deGrom for the Cy Young last year. Wheeler did win it, but I do expect Wheeler didn't win it anyway, but he was right there with him. There was some acrimony going over the Cy Young last year for the National League. Wheeler, I believe, should have won it just from an innings perspective. While they weren't as quality innings as, say, a deGrom or Burns in Milwaukee, the quantity was there, over 200 innings, pitched very well for them. And so I can kind of see the argument, if you're a Phillies fan, that he was the best pitcher in the National League. However, they needed to make some additions. They didn't make the playoffs. Bryce Harper was epic last year, but he just didn't have much protection in that lineup. Gene Segura, Reese Hoskins, anyway, is going to be there as well. The two additions for me of Nick Castellanos, who's been the best bat in the majors over the last 2 years, and the addition of Kyle Schwarber should really help lengthen out this lineup. On days when their pitching staff just doesn't have it at the back of that rotation, maybe their offense can lift them up. Bullpen has been an issue for years. They have invested a little bit of money back there this offseason, but like I said, bullpens are cyclical. Maybe those pitchers who played terribly last year pitch a little bit better this year. Pitchers that they're signing may have worse years this year. So it remains to be seen what kind of a bullpen they have. We'll have to see at the end of April where that bullpen is and if they need to go out and address it again. But if you're Dave Dombrowski, you've done all you need to for the lineup. The question now becomes starting pitching. Aaron Nola is still there, of course, along with Zach Wheeler. They're probably going to need another starter before the end of the year. There will be a number of starters on the market this year, in addition to Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea of the A's. Tyler Mahle of the Reds and Luis Castillo of the Reds as well is going to be out there. The Marlins are probably going to have to look at their payroll constraints. After Jeter left the Marlins, there was some rumblings about Nick Castellanos, and that's the reason why Jeter left, is that ownership wasn't willing to invest. They did spend a lot of money on Avisaíl Garcia. They do have a lot of young starters, but before they get to their big paydays, maybe they turn in one of those blue chippers and get some more youth in there, possibly and maybe the Philadelphia Phillies could reap the benefits of something like that. On to the Miami Marlins. Of course, Derek Jeter is no longer there. This team is not going to compete for a playoff spot. As much as you would like to push the pedal down and move forward as the franchise, this team is stuck in quicksand, and it seems like they perpetually will be. If you're a Derek Jeter fan, you know what he's all about. Consistent, winning, and it's all about professionalism. The youth is there for the Marlins. They built it the right way. Were they willing to put the foot down when the youth got there? They went in a little bit and got Avisaíl Garcia. You can debate me in the comments whether or not you think he's the right piece for them. I don't believe he is. He's a right fielder by trade, and it sounds like they're going to try him in center field. How many times have we seen this experiment start and fail? Ruin a good hitter and as Avisaíl Garcia. He needs to be in right field. They needed to bring in somebody who was a center fielder. Kevin Pillar, who went to the Dodgers, would have been a nice piece for them. Give him a starting role. Let Garcia be the bat in right field. But again, this team is very young. They need those young pieces to continue to progress. So we'll see if they do so. Um, it's been a long year for the Miami Marlins fans. You've had to deal with a lot of struggles over the past several years. It remains to be seen if they'll have any success going forward after Jeter has left this franchise. I do have faith in the front office. Kim Ng has put together a nice, solid core, but will they add to it? Moving on to the NL Central. The Central is kind of a toss-up for me. Everybody says the Brewers are the favorite, and I believe they probably are, especially with the additions they've made and the starting staff that they have. But the questions for me have always come down to health, both of their bullpen, Devin Williams punching the wall in the regular season last year and wasn't available for the playoffs. They also lost out on the production of Christian Yelich. He always seems to be struggling with some type of injury. Lorenzo Cain is another year older. Will he stay healthy? They have Christian Hero there as well. The Brewers should do very well, but that starting staff is the beginning and end of that conversation for that team. They should finish probably 1 or 2 in that division. Remains to be seen how good the Cardinals are going to be. But if you're a Brewers fan, it's all about that starting staff, and can they continue to get enough talent out of that minor league system? They don't really have top prospects, but they have enough that maybe they can squeeze out an extra win here or there. Maybe their bullpen improves a little bit with the addition of Williams coming back from injury. Hader, will he stay there all year? Maybe, maybe not. I expect he'll probably be traded. It's been speculated for years that he's probably going to be gone. This is the year I believe he finally moves, and maybe they get some pieces back that'll help them for a stretch run. Will it help them as much as a Josh Hader or be effective as a Josh Hader? No, but they might be more helpful to them in the playoff run by helping them in ancillary roles. Third baseman here, reliever there, back-end starter. Maybe that's the kind of package they end up getting instead of going for the prospect-heavy package that they always seem to go for. The next team in the division I want to cover is going to be the St. Louis Cardinals. They always seem to have homegrown talent that just continues to come through. The addition of Nolan Arenado last year really did help them, and I expect another year in St. Louis. He should do much better. If you're a Cardinals fan, let us know in the comments. Let us know what you think this team should do. The loss of Wong last year, I think the loss of him at second base, the loss of Carpenter going to the Rangers this offseason, a lot of long-term Cardinals are now out the door. We'll see if some of that youth can come in. Tyler O'Neill in the outfield played well last year. We'll see if he takes the next step in his career. But if you're a Cardinals fan, you're probably looking at that starting staff. You no longer have Carlos Martinez. Will they continue to have that success? They did win. They did go a little older at the end of last year with John Gray to kind of give them a chance towards playoff contention. Will they continue to do something like that if they find themselves in playoff contention this year? I believe they will. They never want to invest too much of their prospect capital in a trade, so it's probably going to be one of those menial trades again at the trade deadline for a guy like a John Lester, those types. The next team in the division, the Chicago Cubs, after sending away lots of their homegrown talent that they did have, saying we need to save payroll, save payroll, save payroll, they spend payroll, and apparently ownership is interested in buying the soccer team in Chelsea. If you're a Cubs fan, this is very confusing. After years of saying we want to build naturally, and they have all this youthful, homegrown talent, Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber. You did bring in some starters, and you did bring in a Aroldis Chapman to get you the title. But they had a lot of homegrown talent on that team, and they let it walk out the door when the price tag got a little high. Javier Baez, everybody thought maybe he was the piece they keep. Nope, they flipped him at the deadline to the Mets, and now he's a Detroit Tiger. If you're a Cubs fan, it's been nothing but mixed signals. They did bring in a starting pitcher, Marcus Stroman. He should perform very well there. He is still very young. I thought he was older than what he was, but he's still in his 20s. So the Cubs do get him on the right side of the age curve. From an offensive side of baseball, the biggest addition that they made, though, was in the outfield with Suzuki. He should perform very well as well. Suzuki was the MVP in the Korean Baseball League, I believe, or Japan. I can't remember which one he came from off the top of my head. But the total investment for the Cubs was $99.5 million after the posting fee. Great contract for the Cubs if it works out. But we've seen a number of these contracts lately not work out. Look at the Rays and Satsugo. He isn't even on the Rays anymore. I believe he's playing for the Pittsburgh Pirates right now. We'll see if he continues to have that success that he had over there. With the lockout and everything in a short spring training, maybe his first year is probably going to be a little rougher than what you might expect if you're a Cubs fan. Nico Horner is another year older. Maybe he continues to progress. Ian Happ is still there. You have Kendricks is still there from the starting staff as well. The bullpen has got a lot of youth in it, so we'll see if they can close out games. But this is a rebuilding team. They're trying to rebuild on the fly by bringing in some starting talent with Marcus Stroman and bringing in the Suzuki from the through the posting fee and all that. So we'll see if they can rebuild on the fly as opposed to completely gutting it like they did when they built up to win the World Series. The next team in this division is going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Cincinnati Reds. I'm going to lump both of these together because they're rebuilding clubs after trading away a couple of pieces on their team, Sonny Gray, Jesse Winker, Eugenio Suarez. The Rays are not the team they were last year. Castellanos isn't there either. That offense is going to struggle to score runs. Their pitching staff is all they have, and it's going to be traded at the deadline. We already know this. Tyler Mahle is probably the easiest one to attain if you're another team, and I expect him to be dealt. He should do very well wherever he ends up going. He's been very consistent. Luis Castillo, after having a little bit of a down year for him anyway, was still a very effective starter last year. He was sub-4 ERA for most of his career before this as well. He's going to command a hefty price tag if they trade him, and I expect they will. They're going to try to gut this thing all the way to the basement. They have contracts to get rid of as well. Mike Moustakas, I believe, has $38 million left on his deal, so a little bit pricey there. And he's kind of playing out of position, or at least he was before the Eugenio Suarez deal. Maybe he flexes back over to third base, and maybe being back home at third base will improve his numbers and make that contract a little bit more palatable if his production improves. If you're a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, I feel for you. Brian Reynolds is really the only thing you really have going for that franchise. A lot of youth. You're hoping for draft picks. You're hoping for another low draft pick to be able to get another high draft pick, another low finish in the standings this year. If you're a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, it's all about Ryan Reynolds. Do they end up trading him this season? Quite possibly. Center fielders are in demand. What kind of price tag remains to be seen. The last division, of course, is the NL West. The Los Angeles Dodgers, they're the class of this division to me still, even with the losses of Scherzer, Seager, Jansen. They're still the class of the division. Sorry, San Diego Padres fans. The Padres lineup their starting staff just wasn't able to keep it together as the year wore on. And injuries did play a big part in that, don't get me wrong. But the Dodgers are where it begins and ends in this division. That offense, Mookie Betts, Max Muncy anyway, Justin Turner, there's just too much. Cody Bellinger should rebound and have a nice year. I don't expect him to hit 200 again for another year. I expect him more to the 250, 275 range that we've seen him through his entire career. They have the best catcher in the game, possibly in Will Smith, depending on what you think of Real Muto in Philadelphia. The Dodgers are very good. Walker Buehler is still there. They are going to feel a little bit of the losses on the starting staff, though. Trevor Bauer is still going through the administrative leave because of his domestic violence thing. Let us know in the comment section what you think of the Dodgers and where you think they'll finish in that division. But to me, it's clearly at the top. Next team in this division is going to be the San Diego Padres. Sorry, Giants fans, I don't believe in your miracle 107-win season. I do believe in the youth that you found at the starting pitcher with Logan Webb. He should have a very good career going forward. However, everybody played above their head on the offense. Every single San Francisco Giant was above their career average last year. Evan Longoria had a little bit of a bounce back year. Brendan Crawford, way above his head. A number of other players that are aging. Brandon Belt, he signed the qualifying offer. So I can't really blame him for taking that because he played very well. $18 million a year is a good contract for him. This team is not going to be at that playoff level, though. They're going to be looking around that 80, 82, 85 wins because of that starting staff. They did get Rodon from the White Sox. They should be a little bit better than they were last year. They lost Gosman to the Blue Jays. But again, this offense is going to regress to the mean, that they are not going to be nearly as effective. But from a Padres perspective, they do have some holes in their lineup, don't get me wrong, and they're going to miss 3 months of Tatis. But when he comes back, I expect they'll probably be in third in that division. When he comes back, they should leapfrog the Giants probably by August. So they should finish probably in that wild card spot. But they were trying to move players like Eric Hosmer this offseason. They were trying to move players like Will Myers. They were unable to move either one of them. They did chase after Suzuki. Yu Darvish even wined and dined him, kind of showed him around. They played catch at Petco Park and all that. They just weren't able to convince him, which for me is a little telling about where this franchise might be going in a couple of years. They're a little top-heavy with a lot of their talent. They traded away Frazier that they acquired from Pittsburgh last year. They were kind of had a redundancy at that position. That trade was a little mystifying at the time anyway. But as far as the San Diego Padres, this starting staff is where the focus needs to be. Yu Darvish, does he rebound? Does the health of all those other starters who've been injured? Meadows was a young starter last year. Does he continue to progress as well? If you're a Padres fan, there's a lot to look forward to. However, Tatis getting in multiple motorcycle accidents this year is not helpful, especially after they had to move him to the outfield last year due to injury as well. The manager Doug Melvin, anyway, that they got from the Oakland A's is now the manager there. Experience should help them. Maybe they close out a few of those games a little bit better. Rotations, probably playing time, probably is a little bit better as well due to having a steady hand at manager. Nothing against Jace Tingler, but it was just time to have some experience there, especially for such a youthful team. At certain spots, they need to have somebody in there who knew where to press those, or what buttons to press and when to press them. Again, we already talked about the Giants. I don't expect them to win 107 games. Mid-80s, maybe a high 70s, somewhere in there. I don't expect anywhere near the win total that they had last year. The last two teams in the division, the Colorado Rockies, they did sign Chris Bryant, but they're still a rebuilding franchise. Brendan Rodgers needs to make good on his talent, make good on that draft pick that they invested in him. They did sign Ryan McMahon to a contract extension, 6 years, $70 million. He's going to be a great player one day. I have a lot of faith in his bat-to-ball skills. He's very flexible, just like Chris Bryant as well. So maybe Chris Bryant and him can kind of form kind of a tandem there over the next several years. But the loss of Trevor Story in the offseason and the way that relationship ended, the loss of Nolan Arenado the year before that, and the way that relationship ended, makes me wonder what they're doing there in Colorado. The Chris Bryant contract doesn't make sense to me. The addition does. You always want to have more talent. But at that price tag, they weren't able to form a team around Nolan Arenado, and that's part of the reason why Nolan Arenado wanted to go away. Now, don't get me wrong. They did invest some money in that team. They just invested it very, very, very poorly. The pitching, the bullpen additions that they tried to make, Jake McGee, the Ian Desmond contract, possibly the worst contract in Major League Baseball history. The money that they've spent just doesn't make sense. It hasn't made sense for years. This contract is no different. Chris Bryant, that's about the contract I did expect him to sign, but the wrong team. A number of the other teams were in the mix for him. The Mariners were in the mix as well. You'd think they'd rather have Chris Bryant than Eugenio Suarez, but maybe the enticement of Jesse Winker was a little bit that pushed it over the top for them. But if you're a Rockies fan, the pitching staff, you lost John Gray. Marquez is there. He signed the extension as well, Sensatella as well. But this is a rebuilding franchise. Charlie Blackmon's winding down in his career. A lot of money left on that deal as well, but he's not nearly as effective as he once was. He still hits for a solid average, but the defense just has seriously fallen off the table over the past couple of years. They'd made a trade for Grichuk, I believe, as well with the Toronto Blue Jays in the past few days. He should take some time in the outfield, but don't get me wrong, this team is a rebuilding franchise. Last team, of course, is the Arizona Diamondbacks. Madison Bumgarner went there, took the money, 4 years. I believe it was $72 million last year. He did have a little bit of a dead arm last year, 5 ERA. So it seems like he's on the backside of his career. They have a couple of good young pieces as well in that starting staff, a couple of good outfielders as well. They no longer have Jake Lamb. He goes to the Dodgers in kind of a reserve role. The Diamondbacks just don't have a lot going for them, and it's going to be years before we see them in playoff contention again. So sorry if you're a Diamondbacks fan, but hopefully you get some youth that's make some strides this year. You get a good draft pick, and maybe you're looking like the Texas Rangers next year if you invest some money in this team. So the last thing I want to go over is going to be playoff predictions. I was kind of thinking about it as I was getting ready to go out live and trying to figure out how to get the live stream back up anyway. But as far as the playoffs are concerned, there's an extra playoff team for each league this year. The DH is going to be in both leagues, so you don't really have any pitching issues if you're a National League team anymore. You don't have to worry about your pitchers trying to hit, unless, of course, you're Madison Bumgarner and he's a decent hitter. But they're not going to be making the playoffs, so no need to worry about it anyway. The teams that I expect to win their division, we'll just kind of run down the list. Starting in the American League, it's very tough in the American League East. 4 teams vying for that division, in my opinion: the Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, and Rays. The class of this division, Yankees and Blue Jays and Rays. The Red Sox are going to fade as the season goes along. That pitching staff is going to feel those injuries earlier in the year, and they're just not going to be able to recover quick enough, I believe, to be able to be in the hunt for a playoff spot. So I have the team winning this division is the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays just have made enough additions to me to justify this selection. Jose Barrios last year, the addition of him and the contract extension to lock him up. They also got Gosman from the San Francisco Giants. He seemed to figure something out last year. Matt Chapman as well, a little bit of a down year by his standards. So if he gets anywhere near that production that he's used to or goes up, we'll see what happens there as well. But to me, Blue Jays are the class of the AL East anyway. Yankees probably finished second in my opinion. The question for me about them is still their pitching staff. They've addressed their lineup, but to me, their lineup was never really a question anyway. They would have found a shortstop one way or another. I have no doubt about that. First base, it was either going to be Rizzo or Freeman. Rizzo seemed to really like playing for New York last year, so I had no qualms about them getting him back. The one thing that did kind of surprise me, though, was the addition of Josh Donaldson. His addition should prove very beneficial, at least for this year, but the money was the surprise. They were willing to take on the money of Donaldson, but not willing to invest the money in Carlos Correa. Maybe they're looking at Giancarlo Stanton and Joey Gallo and Aaron Judge and thinking about those contracts, maybe a Gleyber Torres contract down the line, DJ LeMahieu's money. They're still paying Aaron Hicks money as well. But if you're a Yankees fan, you really missed out, or you missed the boat anyway, when Carlos Correa signed a 3-year contract with the Minnesota Twins. 3 years, $105 million could easily have been spent by the Yankees, and they almost did spend that with the addition of Kiner Falefa and Donaldson. I don't see the reason for the trade that they made. Isaiah Kiner Falefa is a very nice player defensively. If he had played on the Yankees last year, he would have led them in hits, even though he's not a bat, which tells you all you need to know about the struggles or limitations anyway of that lineup. If you're a Yankees fan, I'm sorry. The pitching staff is where I got to draw the line. Garrett Cole is really all you had last year. You got some youth at the back end, people coming back from injury as well. Severino. We'll see if they can recapture some of that success that they had as well. Davy Garcia probably is going to be in the starting or in the rotation at some point. I just don't see it if you're a Yankees fan, why you're better than the Blue Jays right now on paper. When you play the games, I still believe both the lineup and the starting rotation are better for the Blue Jays. The bullpen, maybe you have a little bit better bullpen, but Chapman wasn't exactly locked down last year. Maybe he returns to form this year, but every year he gets a little older. Maybe all those innings are finally catching up with him. We'll see what they end up doing. I do believe they end up getting a starter around the deadline. Maybe that'll help boost their playoff chances, but the Blue Jays by far right now have the best team on paper, and I expect them to win that division. The Tampa Bay Rays, every year, everybody counts them out, and I'm going to, of course, try to count them out again this year, but I do believe that they're going to make the playoffs as a wild card team, as the third team in this division to make the playoffs. Yankees will make it as a wild card, but the Blue Jays will take the division. Yankees, of course, the wild card, and now the Rays will be a wild card. This is a 3-playoff team division. It's very good, very top-heavy. Everybody's going to beat up on the Orioles again. For the Blue Jays, though, this is all about that starting staff. Can they continue to get that youthful rotation to play well? The Central Division, the White Sox, I already mentioned, are probably going to be the winners here. I fully expect them to take that next step. Robert, that's the player I was trying to think of earlier anyway. Luis Robert, another year of him leading the way for them. Jimenez had some injuries last year, a full year of him. He should do very well. This is a very solid, complete team, best bullpen in the American League, so they should close out games late. They shouldn't be giving away games. If one closer should fail, Liam Hendricks, they have another one in-house in Craig Kimbrell. Kimbrell, of course, didn't play exactly great down the stretch last year, but that was because he was in an 8th-inning role, and for an 8th-inning guy, you can't ask for much better than having a 1-2 punch of Liam Hendricks and Craig Kimbrell. From the division as well, I do believe the Twins will be in the hunt with the addition of Carlos Correa. I don't expect them to win the division by any stretch. The starting staff of the White Sox might be the only qualm that I have with them after losing Rodon. He did seem to figure out something last year and was in Cy Young consideration. His loss will be felt, and Correa's addition will be felt as well. So maybe they're pushed a little bit as they come down the stretch, but the White Sox should easily take this division. I don't expect any other team to make the playoffs from that division. Finally, we go to the AL West. Of course, I already mentioned the Astros are taking this division. The Astros have played very well for a number of years. They still have a lot of talent that's young as well with Kyle Tucker. Michael Brantley, while he is aging, is still very effective as well. The rotation is very young, but that playoff success that they had last year should translate to growth for those young starting pitchers. The loss of Zach Greinke and Lance McCullers not being available to start the season will hurt in the beginning, but they should end up taking that division. The last team I expect to make the playoffs, though, is the Seattle Mariners. I'm surprised, too. The additions of Robbie Ray and the starting staff, the additions they could make via trade because they have Jerry Dipoto and all that top talent in the minor leagues. They have a lot of outfielders, and there's only 3 outfield spots. Of course, they could flex one to DH or first base every now and again, but I fully expect to possibly trade one of those top young prospects to get what they need at the deadline. This is a team that could have a few holes, but as of right now, if everything breaks the way I expect it to, the Mariners should finally break their playoff drought. If you're a Mariners fan, this is what you've been waiting to hear for decades now. And yes, I mean decades. They haven't made the playoffs in, I believe, at least 15, almost 19 years, somewhere in that area. But it's been a long time since the Ichiro Suzuki days, the 100-win team back in 2001. It's been a long time since they've had that kind of success. This could be the start of that kind of success for them. The team that I have just missing the playoffs is going to be the Texas Rangers. The additions that they made on offense, the spring training that they've had, a lot of their players who had down years last year compared to their regular season averages anyway, should regress to the mean, so their offense should be much better. The pitching staff will get a lot of boost down the stretch as they get more of that young talent coming in as the season progresses. Jack Leiter should make his debut towards August, September. Josh Young, who was supposed to take over that third base role to start the season, he's going to miss most of the season, maybe all the season with a torn labrum. So if you're a Rangers fan, which I am, it really does suck to lose Josh Young's potential there. However, the additions of Corey Seager and Marcus Semien should really propel this team, maybe even get them above 80, 82, 83 wins. Them and the Red Sox should probably be finishing, or the Twins should probably be finishing 1, 2, 3, just missing the playoffs. From the NL side of the equation, to me, the NL East, the Atlanta Braves just won the title. You still got to have them in the playoffs, in my estimation. The youth that they have in their starting staff did get a lot of experience last year. However, the depth isn't there that they had last year. They don't have all those Jock Petersons and Jorge Solers to turn to. They don't have the Freddie Freeman to lead the team anymore. They're going to have to rely on Ronald Acuna and see if he can continue to make the impact that they were hoping he would. Will the injury hinder him this season? Quite possibly. So he's going to have to be that MVP level player that he was early on in his career. The addition of Matt Olson should help, but to me, the team that wins this division is going to be the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't believe that pitching or that great hitting beats good pitching. However, there's a lot of good hitting in Philadelphia, and they have some really good starting pitching. They're going to have to address that end of the rotation. They're going to have to make sure that bullpen holds out, but I believe the Philadelphia Phillies take the division. A team that I do expect to make the playoffs, though, that I haven't mentioned yet, is going to be the New York Mets. They've really improved that team, but as good as that starting staff is, it's all going to be about health for them. Does Max Scherzer still have a dead arm by the end of this, or is he going to have another dead arm by the end of the season? Is he finally done? Has he finally reached his limit as a pitcher? Maybe. DeGrom was injured last year as well. Chris Bassett, the addition from the A's, should help out as far as lengthening that rotation, allowing them to fill in for some of those losses if they do have some of those injuries in the starting staff again. However, they're not better than the Phillies on paper right now. The offense, while they have a lot of good pieces, they don't have a lot of great pieces. Francisco Lindor is their great piece, and he hasn't played well for a couple of years now. He does look better in spring training so far, so it remains to be seen if he will continue to have that success. On the central side of the equation, I have the Milwaukee Brewers taking the division. I don't really have a good feel for this division. It could go a number of different ways. If the starting pitching gets injured for the Brewers and their outfield gets older and Yelich doesn't get better, Cardinals probably take the division. On the other hand, the Cardinals don't really have a lot going for them outside of maybe a Nolan Arenado and just the Cardinal way, I guess you could call it. Picture it like the New England Patriots in football. It seems like the St. Louis Cardinals are kind of that for baseball. They just have their own way of doing things. They always go for their own guys. They promote from within. However, the losses of Matt Carpenter in the locker room, along with Colton Wong, is going to be felt. To me, Matt Carpenter provided them a lot of stability. That starting staff, they're having another year of Wainwright. We'll see if he continues to have some success there as well. But for my money, it still goes to the Brewers. The Cubs could be in the mix if injuries should befall the Brewers, or if the Cardinals just don't perform like they usually do. But for me, it's still the Brewers, and it's only a one-team playoff, or one team makes the playoffs out of this division. Finally, of course, the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to take that division. I expect them to be the best team in the National League this coming year. There's just too much going for them. The starting staff, even with the loss of Max Scherzer, the addition of Andrew Heaney as well, um, whether you believe Clayton Kershaw is going to be healthy or not by the end of the year, I still believe this staff has everything they need, Dustin May, those kinds of players, in order to get the job done. They have enough depth in the minors to be able to get what they need as well, as we saw last year getting Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. The price was exorbitant, don't get me wrong, but the Dodgers just seem to go get what they need, and they're all about world championships at this point, trying to maximize the title window of a player like Mookie Betts. Will that continue? Hopefully. If you're a Dodgers fan, that continues. If you're a team in the division like the Padres, I expect them to make the playoffs as well. The team is going to miss Fernando Tatis, and that's why I don't believe they'll win the division. Even if Tatis was available for a full season, that starting staff is the biggest question mark. Will they remain healthy? They certainly have enough options now from a starting point of view. But if you're a Padres fan, it's still looking up at the Dodgers. Mookie Betts is the best player on either team, even with Fernando Tatis when he's available. He just does everything that you could ask from him in right field. He plays every day. He doesn't miss time. Tatis, multiple motorcycle accidents. It tells you all you need to know about where his head is at as a young player. Do I expect that to get better as he gets older? Absolutely. But for right now, this division is still going to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Just to kind of run down one last time, we have the Blue Jays taking the division, the AL East, with the Yankees and Rays taking wild card spots. Remember, there's an extra wild card spot this year for both leagues. For the Central, I believe the Twins to be competitive. However, this is still the White Sox division until they have injuries, etc., to where they might lose it. Tony La Russa, great manager, can't really compete against him if you're in this division. The Twins are the only one who could hold a candle to him, and that's only because of the addition of Carlos Correa. If you're a Yankees team or Yankees fan, missing out on Carlos Correa really does hurt you as far as my predictions. If they had Carlos Correa, maybe still had Gio Urshela at third base, I might look at your team a little bit differently. Maybe if you invested a little bit more on the starting staff as well. But I still expect them to address that in around the trade deadline as far as getting a starter, maybe on an expiring deal, somebody who can give them innings and allow their horses to really save their arms for the playoffs. But for right now, you have the Blue Jays and White Sox taking the division. The Astros are going to take it in the AL West. The wild cards are going to be Yankees, Yankees, Rays, and Mariners, ending their playoff drought. For the NL side, we have the Phillies taking the NL East, Mets and Braves making it in the wild card, Brewers taking the division in the Central, Dodgers winning the division and being the best team in the NL West, along with the Padres making the division. Teams that just missed on the NL side, to me, the San Francisco Giants, while you do have really good starters and you did improve that starting staff by getting Carlos Rodon, that lineup played way above their head last year. There ain't no way they're winning 107 games this year. Count it, book it, go to Vegas, put money on it, whatever you want to do. They are not winning 107 games this year. It's just not going to happen. They're one of my teams that I have just missing. St. Louis Cardinals are another team I have just missing. They don't have enough ammunition, in my opinion, to be able to really compete with any of these big boys in the NL anyway. But that's my playoff bracket. World Series, who do I have in the World Series? Well, I do believe the White Sox time is now. They still have a lot of young talent on their team that's on cheap contracts. I don't expect that to continue for too much longer anyway. They're going to have to start paying this young talent. So the White Sox possibly. The only other team I really considered for this was the Blue Jays, just because they're a complete team. However, the travel, I think, will probably end up getting them in the postseason, just going back and forth and back and forth. And while the vaccine mandate might help them in the postseason as well, win home games, if it's a head-to-head series in the AL Championship Series between the White Sox and Blue Jays, White Sox are going to take that one. There's just a lot to like about what the White Sox are doing. From the NL side, the Dodgers, like I said, are still the class of the NL. It's hard to count against them. Even though the Braves did beat them in the playoffs last year, I don't expect them to do so again. So it remains to be seen what kind of success teams like the Braves or Phillies will have. The additions the Phillies did have, or that they did make, really do step up their game for me. but they're going to have to make a couple of trade deadline acquisitions in my estimation, and I'm going to wait and see what those acquisitions are. Are they enough of an impact to really solidify that starting staff, the back end of the bullpen, those kinds of things? Or are they more menial upgrades and they're going to have to rely on their bats? Their bats are not going to play as well in the postseason. Pitching does play up, so Wheeler and Nola should be more effective, but they're going to have to ride them all season long anyway, and by the playoffs, their arm's going to be exhausted. We saw that with Wheeler last year. There just wasn't enough in the tank to finish out the year. We'll see if that happens again this year, but they're going to have to make an addition to that starting staff. Maybe they go after a guy like Luis Castillo from the Reds. Dombrowski doesn't really care about prospects, so maybe they go in and go ahead and go get him. But again, World Series comes down to the White Sox and Dodgers. For me, it's the Dodgers winning this thing. I expect them to go get what they need at the deadline. They're going to have Walker Buehler in Game 1, Clayton Kershaw in Game 2, and probably if they get Trevor Bauer back, Trevor Bauer in Game 3. If they don't, probably a deadline addition there. In the offseason, that's where the real questions begin for the Dodgers. Do they keep Trey Turner? Those kinds of things. That remains to be seen. There's going to be a number of different offseason storylines to keep up with. But for right now, division winners, Blue Jays, White Sox, Astros, Phillies, Brewers, and Dodgers, with the White Sox and Dodgers in the World Series. And I'll save my prediction for the World Series once we get a little closer to that. But right now, if I had my World Series picks, we're looking Dodgers and White Sox, but leaning Dodgers, just to be honest. They just have a lot going for them. So let us know in the comment section what you think your playoff predictions are going to be. And thanks for joining us here at The Upside.